Walk into any electronics store right now, and the salesperson will immediately start throwing around two magical words: Dolby Atmos. They'll tell you this soundbar will transform your living room into a cinema, that you'll hear helicopters flying overhead and rain falling from the ceiling. They'll show you the glossy box with those premium badges and assure you it's worth every penny. But here's what they won't tell you. Most of these soundbars are lying to you. The Dolby Atmos badge doesn't guarantee great sound. In fact, some of the worst soundbars tested in 2026 have Dolby Atmos plastered right on the front, and they still sound terrible. Before you waste your money on overpriced disappointment, hit that subscribe button and drop a like if you want the honest truth about soundbars. And tell me in the comments, which soundbar or speaker setup are you using right now, and what problems are you facing with it? Let's get into it. Understanding the Dolby Atmos trap. Let's start with the basics because the audio industry is banking on your confusion. Dolby Atmos is supposed to create three-dimensional sound by adding height channels to your audio. In a real cinema, this means speakers mounted in the ceiling firing sound down at you. When a helicopter flies across the screen, you actually hear it move from front to back and rise above your head. That's true Atmos, and it's genuinely impressive. But here's the problem. Most soundbars claiming Dolby Atmos don't have real height speakers. Instead, they use something called virtualization. This is basically software trickery where the soundbar tries to bounce sound off your ceiling to create the illusion of height. And in theory, that could work. But in practice, especially in 2026's budget and mid-range models, it fails miserably. The soundbars we're about to expose don't just fail at Atmos, they fail at the basics too. Muddy dialogue, weak bass, flat sound stages, and connectivity nightmares that make streaming a headache. And the worst part is these aren't just cheap off-brand products. Some of them come from names you'd trust, priced at hundreds or even close to $1,000. The Audio Labs have tested over 50 soundbars this year, and the results are shocking. Some models scored so low that you genuinely get better sound from your TV's built-in speakers. So let's break down the worst offenders and what makes them so bad. The bottom of the barrel. Let's talk about the absolute worst performers first, the ones that should have never made it to store shelves. The Moreto Wooden 2.1 soundbar earned a dismal 48% overall score in professional lab testing. To put that in perspective, anything below 60% is considered poor, and this thing didn't even crack 50. The music performance scored 40%, and multi-channel audio also hit 40%, meaning whether you're listening to Spotify or watching an action movie, it sounds equally flat and lifeless. There's no depth, no clarity, just a muddy wall of sound that makes you wonder why you didn't just stick with your TV speakers. Then there's the TV Voice Pro Air Plus, which might sound familiar because it's marketed specifically to seniors and people with hearing difficulties. It promises boosted dialogue and clear vocals, and sure, it does that. But here's the catch. It costs $879 and scores just 63% overall. Music performance drops to 48%, and movie sound hits 60%. This is a soundbar designed to do one thing, dialogue, and it sacrifices everything else to do it. If you're watching anything beyond the evening news, you're stuck with thin, lifeless audio that makes concerts sound like AM radio and action scenes feel empty. For nearly $900, that's inexcusable. And then we have the Sony HTS-2000, a name that carries weight because it's Sony. You expect quality, right? This soundbar scored 64% overall, which puts it barely above failing. The sound is described as just okay, nothing impressive, nothing terrible. But here's where it gets ridiculous. The standby energy use is abysmal. This thing guzzles power even when it's supposed to be off, quietly driving up your electricity bill month after month. And despite having Dolby Atmos on the box, it doesn't have any upward-firing speakers. None. It's relying entirely on virtual processing to fake height channels, and it doesn't work. The sound stays locked to the front, flat and one-dimensional, exactly what Atmos is supposed to fix. This is a perfect example of slapping a premium label on a mediocre product and hoping buyers won't notice. The Dolby Atmos lie. Now, let's dig into why Dolby Atmos doesn't save these soundbars. Real Atmos setups use dedicated height speakers, either mounted in your ceiling or firing upward from the soundbar itself to bounce sound off the ceiling and back down to your ears. When done right, it works beautifully. You hear planes overhead, thunder rolling across the sky, voices coming from above. It adds a whole new dimension to movies and makes everything feel immersive. But most budget and mid-range soundbars skip the actual hardware and just use software virtualization. They take the audio signal, process it through algorithms, and try to trick your brain into thinking sound is coming from above. And sometimes, in perfect conditions with the right room acoustics and ceiling height, it can kinda work. But in real homes with weird layouts, low ceilings, furniture blocking reflections, it falls apart completely. Take the Hisense X5125H, which advertises itself as a 5.1.2 system. That means 5 main channels, 1 subwoofer, and 2 height channels. Sounds impressive on paper. But in reality, those height effects are weak and echo-like, barely noticeable unless you're actively listening for them. The subwoofer is boomy and overpowering, drowning out mid-range frequencies where dialogue lives. The rear speakers are inconsistent, cutting in and out when connected via eARC because the system struggles with audio dropouts. You're constantly adjusting volume and settings trying to get clean sound, and it never quite gets there. This is a soundbar that promises theater-quality immersion and delivers confusion instead. The Samsung HWQ800D takes a different approach with actual upward firing and side firing drivers built into the bar. This should work better, and to be fair, it's not as bad as pure virtualization, but the 3D sound effect is still underwhelming. Like someone turned the height knob up just slightly instead of giving you true overhead presence. Worse, the mids are muddy and overpowering, which means voices get buried in the mix. Watching a drama or following dialogue-heavy content becomes frustrating because you're straining to hear what people are saying over the muffled mess of mid-range frequencies. And despite costing several $100s, it doesn't even include smart streaming features like built-in Wi-Fi or AirPlay. You're stuck connecting everything through HDMI or hoping your TV handles the streaming, which defeats the purpose of buying a premium soundbar. The Sony HTS2000 we mentioned earlier is another offender in this category. It claims Dolby Atmos and DTS:*X support, which are both premium surround formats. But without dedicated height speakers, it's all virtual processing. The bass lacks punch, explosions feel soft, and action scenes sound thin. There's no rear depth either, so surround effects stay locked to the front of the room. The overall presentation feels hollow, like you're listening through a cardboard box. For a brand like Sony, this is disappointing. And for the price, it's unacceptable. Common problems. You'll regret. Beyond Atmos failures, these soundbars share a bunch of other frustrating flaws that make them bad buys. Let's start with bass. Many of these models, especially compact ones, claim they don't need a separate subwoofer because they've got it handled internally. The Klipsch Flexus Core 300 is a great example. It's got upward firing drivers for Atmos, sleek design, and the Klipsch name behind it. But the internal bass is thin and weak, completely unable to fill a room with low-end power. If you want any kind of rumble for movies or depth for music, you need to buy an additional subwoofer, which adds another few $100s to the cost. And even then, the soundstage is narrow, meaning audio doesn't spread wide across your room. Everything sounds crowded and compressed in the middle, with vocals and instruments fighting for space. The mids are cluttered, making dialogue unclear and music messy. Then there's the energy waste problem. Several models, including that Sony HTS2000, burn through electricity even in standby mode. You turn them off at night, but they're still drawing power, costing you money and contributing to your carbon footprint for no reason. Modern electronics should be efficient, but these soundbars ignore that completely. Add in single HDMI ports on some models, meaning you can only connect one device at a time, and the lack of Wi-Fi or AirPlay on others. And you've got products that feel outdated the moment you unbox them. And let's not forget connectivity issues. HDMI eARC and eARC are supposed to make soundbars simple. One cable from your TV to the soundbar, and everything just works. But cheap implementation leads to audio dropouts, sync issues where the sound doesn't match the picture, and random cutouts that force you to restart everything. The Hisense EX5125H is notorious for this, with users reporting constant problems when using eARC. You shouldn't have to troubleshoot your audio setup every time you sit down to watch something, but that's exactly what happens with these poorly designed systems. Who gets hurt the most? These soundbar failures hit certain groups harder than others. Seniors and people with hearing difficulties often buy soundbars specifically for clearer dialogue. They've been sold on the idea that modern soundbars will make voices easier to understand compared to flat TV speakers. And while products like the TV Voice Pro Air Plus technically boost dialogue, they sacrifice everything else. Watching the news might be fine, but try putting on a nature documentary with music and ambient sound, and it falls apart. Movies with layered audio become exhausting to listen to because the soundbar can't balance dialogue against background elements. And at nearly $900, that's a cruel bait and switch for people who trusted the marketing. Movie enthusiasts and gamers get burned too. They're chasing immersive sound, the kind that makes explosions feel real and footsteps directional. They see Dolby Atmos on the box and assume it'll deliver. But when they get home and set it up, the sound is flat, effects don't move around the room, and nothing feels immersive. Gamers especially need clear directional audio to hear enemies approaching or pinpoint shots in competitive play. These soundbars fail at that, offering vague, muddled sound stages where everything blends together. What actually works? So if these soundbars are terrible, what should you buy instead? The truth is, good soundbars exist, but you need to know what to look for. First, prioritize models with actual upward-firing drivers, not virtual processing. These are physical speakers angled upward to bounce sound off your ceiling. They're not perfect, but they're light years better than software trickery. Second, check for eARC support, not just basic ARC. eARC handles higher bandwidth audio formats without dropouts or sync issues. Third, look for overall performance scores above 70% in professional reviews. Anything below that is a gamble, and anything below 60% should be avoided entirely. The Samsung HWQ990F is a strong alternative. It's a full surround system with a subwoofer and wireless rear speakers. So you're getting true multi-channel audio instead of faking it from a single bar. The height effects are convincing, the bass is powerful, and dialogue stays clear even in chaotic action scenes. It's pricier, but the difference in performance justifies the cost. LG and Sony also have models in the 75 to 80% score range that deliver solid all-around performance without gimmicks. If you're on a tighter budget, consider skipping Atmos entirely and focusing on a quality stereo or 3.1 soundbar. A good stereo system with clear mids and strong bass will always sound better than a cheap Atmos system that fakes height channels poorly. Companies like Sonos make compact soundbars that don't promise the moon but deliver consistently good audio for movies, music, and TV. Sometimes simpler is better. Here's what you need to remember. Dolby Atmos is not a magic solution. It's a tool that only works when the hardware and software are properly implemented, and most budget and mid-range soundbars fail at both. The industry knows consumers see that Atmos badge and assume quality, so they slap it on products that don't deserve it. You end up paying hundreds or thousands of dollars for soundbars that sound worse than their non-Atmos competitors and barely better than your TV's built-in speakers. The worst offenders in 2026 share the same problems: weak or non-existent height effects, muddy dialogue, thin bass, connectivity nightmares, and energy waste. Models like the Moreto Wooden 2.1, TV Voice Pro Air Plus, Sony HTS2000, Hisense EX5125H, and Samsung HWQ800D all failed to deliver on their promises despite flashy marketing and premium prices. These aren't just minor disappointments. They're fundamentally flawed products that will frustrate you every time you use them. Before you buy any soundbar, do your research. Look for professional lab test scores, not just user reviews that might be influenced by hype. Prioritize models with actual upward-firing drivers, robust connectivity with eARC support, and balanced audio across all frequencies. And if you can't afford a good Atmos system, don't buy a bad one just to check that box. A solid stereo soundbar will serve you better and cost less. So here's my advice. Skip the hype, ignore the Dolby Atmos label unless the soundbar truly earns it, and focus on real performance. Your ears and your wallet will thank you. If this helped you dodge a terrible purchase, hit that like button, subscribe for more honest audio breakdowns, and drop a comment below. Tell me what soundbar you're considering or what you're using now. And remember, spending smart means knowing the truth. See you in the next one.